This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and this is the Dell XPS 15. Again, this time it's the 7590. So we've reviewed the 9550, the 9560, the 9570. So obviously they're just flopping the numbers around, aren't they? Anyway, suffice it to say, there have been several generations of the XPS 15 with this chassis, so that's unchanged. One thing that did change about the chassis is an important thing. They have moved the webcam up top, so no more chin cam. Yay that. So the biggest problem with the XPS 15 has always been that it's thermally constrained because it's very thin, and it's very light. There's not a lot of room for a cooling solution. So did they engineer something way better inside? Do we believe in Santa Claus? We're going to find out now. So since this is the same chassis as several previous generations that we've reviewed, and you're probably familiar with at this point, we're not going to rehash all the things that are the same, like the keyboard, the Microsoft Precision trackpad. You get the idea. We do have some new display options here. We obviously have a refresh to Intel 9th generation CPUs and an exciting GTX 1050 graphics card update with 4 gigs of GDDR5 VRAM inside. So that's a nice improvement over the previous generation of NVIDIA graphics. Still not RTX level, but hey, we don't expect that here. And now a shout out to our sponsor for this video, Skinit. From the name, you might guess that they make skins for tech devices. So what's cool about them is actually the fact, sure, they make controller skins, they make console skins, they make laptop skins, they make Apple Watch bands, they make phone cases. Here, this is the Galaxy S10, it's a pretty good case. But for the laptop skins, it's not just the usual only Apple and only Surface, maybe Razer. They do ThinkPads, they do Dell, Inspiron, and the XPS 15, ThinkPad X1, ThinkPad P series, all of these different brands. So it's kind of neat for those of you who have something other than a Mac or a Surface device. You can get your own custom skin if you want, or they have licensed branded ones, NBA, Marvel, obviously over here. We've got our Dragon Ball Z skin going on, Hello Kitty too. Or you can choose from different things like faux marble, wood, you get it, textures, metallic, all of that sort of things. Another thing I like about their skins is they're heavy 3M vinyl skins, and they're easy to remove, because if you're like me, you never get it right the first time. You have to pull it off and give it a try again, or maybe you're going to sell your device and you need to get it back to being naked again. So check them out at skinit.com. All right, back to our review of the XPS 15. Still a beautiful unibody machine with a carbon fiber top keyboard deck area. Weighs about 4.5 pounds if you get it with or without a touchscreen, but with the 97 watt-hour battery, and dedicated graphics inside. Still, there's a base model, which is a Core i5, 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gig SSD, just Intel UHD 630 graphics, and the smaller 56 watt-hour battery. And that one starts at around $1,100 or so, a little bit less. But most of you are interested in the higher end models, which start around $1,500 and above. And that gets you into that 97 watt-hour battery, which gives the XPS 15 is typically very good battery life, gets you that dedicated NVIDIA GTX graphics. And if you go up to around $1,850, you get our 4K OLED display, which is a glossy, non-touch display at 400 nits. When it comes to displays, you do have 3 choices now. You still have the last generation, you've gotten brighter though, 4K IPS touchscreen, which adds about $150 additional cost on top of that OLED cost there. That would still be my favorite, because that one's wide gamut too. You still get 100% of Adobe RGB. It's a little brighter, and it's a touchscreen. I do happen to like a touchscreen. But hey, that 4K OLED display is gorgeous to look at. And we've seen Samsung this year released a 15-inch panel for 15-inch laptops. So we've seen a couple, like the HP Spectre X360 15-inch gem cut, for example. There's an OLED Razer Blade, and so on. Well, and even an Alienware 15-inch. Here, Dell really went the extra mile, because one of the things I complained about looking at the Alienware and the HP Spectre 15-inch model was that the display was not nearly at all calibrated from the factory. So OLED displays can be wildly oversaturated. You remember the old Samsung Galaxy phones? Yeah, cartoonishly garish looking. So Dell actually has factory calibration here, and it measured really well in terms of color accuracy. It's quite good stuff here. So it looks vibrant, it looks super high contrast, because, well, you have near infinite contrast with OLED, and perfect blacks because it actually doesn't illuminate the screen when it's displaying black. Plus, you have accurate colors, so it doesn't look kind of cartoony and funny. Aces that. And then the base model is something that's still a very viable choice, particularly if you care about battery life, because you'll gain several hours of battery life. And that's the full HD matte non-touch option. So if you hate glare, if you don't really need the high resolution display, you want more battery life, you want to save some money, more power to you, you can do that. In terms of the internals, no matter whether you go with 8 gigs of RAM or 64 gigs of RAM, and it still has 2 RAM slots, yay, so you can upgrade it yourself, DDR4, 66 megahertz, it's going to be dual channel RAM no matter what. And that does make a difference for performance, so you go Dell. That's a good move. You get an M.2 NVMe SSD, anywhere from 256 gigabyte all the way up to 2 terabyte you can choose in increments. So depends on your budget. You can also do it yourself later because it is a standard M.2 SSD. You have killer Wi-Fi on board, but that's really a rebranded Intel Wi-Fi card. We'll show you the model and the specs on that so you can see for yourself. And it's a Wi-Fi 6 card, so no complaints with that. There's a fingerprint scanner in the power button where it belongs, the usual white backlit keyboard. Again, same keyboard as last gen, 1.3 millimeters of key travel. It's short, your fingers kind of bottom out, like your finger joints may hurt a little bit from that, but at least the keys move appreciably compared to Apple's Butterfly keyboard, which is one of the main competitors, obviously still to the XPS 15. It's not a terrible keyboard, just not cushy, roomy, ThinkPad-y or anything like that. Same Microsoft Precision trackpad, like I said, good stuff there. Speaking of the competition, obviously there is the 15-inch MacBook Pro with its foibles. It's not really something that you can upgrade or repair yourself after the fact, the Butterfly keyboard. Yeah, so there, Dell's doing pretty well. But the rest of the competition has really moved up, where the Dell XPS 15 used to seem like a miracle because 4 to 4.5 pounds. Wow, that was really light, right? And it's pretty thin, too. Now, in terms of weight and in terms of thickness versus some gaming laptops of the thin and light variety, well, it's not so amazing anymore. So you have the MSI GS65 Stealth Thin. The only thing about that one is it's nice looking. It's not as classy and as rigid as the Dell. So the Dell still has that going for those of you who want that business premium, yeah, and staid kind of looks thing. The Razer Blade 15 is still big competition, and we've done comparisons with that before, especially the advanced model. And that one does have better thermals and also faster graphics inside, so that one's tempting. But that one's also more expensive. That one starts at about $2,000. So you're looking at $500 to $1,000 more maybe for a comparable configuration, other than the GPU being better on the Razer Blade. And then there's the Asus ROG Zephyrus S line, a premium thin and light gaming laptop, but that one has the forward shifted keyboard and the weirdo trackpad on the side kind of design. So there's still a place for the Dell is what I'm trying to tell you. And the target audience for this really still is kind of the pro apps user, Adobe Premiere, Adobe Photoshop, and the high-end business user. This, despite the fact you're going to be so tempted because it has a GTX 1650 card inside, this is not a gaming laptop. The thermals are still just not up to it. We have the Intel 9th generation CPUs inside, Core i5, which is a 4-core, Core i7, which is a 6-core, and now Core i9, which, yay, with the 9th generation actually adds more cores, so that's an 8-core, and that's what we have. And if you combine that with our GPU inside, and you're trying to play something like Overwatch or Apex, 2 games that are current, but not the most demanding out there, your CPU cores will just plug along at maximum thermal, 100 degrees centigrade. So that isn't ideal. Now, I did try using throttle stop and try and undervolt it, which usually is a great thing to do with a lot of laptops, and particularly gaming laptops, to bring the temperatures down. And it did drop those CPU core temperatures about 5 degrees centigrade, which you're looking at 95 instead of 100, so that's a little better, sometimes even 89, 90. But I found it, even with a really modest 125 millivolt undervolting on the core and cache, it wasn't that stable. And that's really at the point where you need to be if you really want to see those thermal benefits. So yeah, if I was buying this, totally I would go with Core i7. Because the Core i9 is throttling a lot, you're not getting the benefit of that faster CPU if it's going to be throttling back a lot of the time. The graphics card is very capable, and we have the latest BIOS. Apparently Dell had a little whoopsie at first, and if the GPU temperatures went beyond 75 centigrade, it throttled back to 300 megahertz clock speeds. Nothing runs at 300 megahertz. That was 15 years ago when they did. So now it throttles back to around 1150 megahertz, which still means your frame rates stay great. So if you are playing something like Overwatch, you can easily get in the 60s for frame rate on high at full HD resolution. Even Apex, you can exceed, sometimes even hit the 70s on high, and mix of high and medium settings there at full HD resolution. So it's a pretty solid performer for something that's not even in the RTX family, so you're not going to get ray tracing. So that part is good. But the thermals on this and the stability issues that can result from that, sometimes that game's crashing even when I wasn't undervolting, yeah. But if you're using this for Adobe Premiere, it's really lovely. Sometimes your core temperatures will go up to the upper 80s, maybe even lower 90s, but that's about it. And then they come back down. If you're doing Photoshop, that's a breeze. If you're doing moderate Blender work, I don't mean you're the next greatest 3D guru there that's got a very set of complex models going on. But for Blender work, on average, it's very good. For you business users who just want a posh big screen laptop, it totally can handle all kinds of business stuff. Icing on the cake is the fact that we have Thunderbolt 3, which we had before, full 40 gigabit per second. So if you want to use an external GPU, which would be a great way to keep the laptop running a bit cooler, because if you're not using the internal GPU, it's a lot easier for the cooling solution to do its work. We have a full-size SD card slot, and it is a fast one. You have a good selection of ports overall on this laptop. It's not constrained. It's not USB-C only or anything like that. The speakers on this are also pretty good. They're 2-watt speakers. Two 2-watt speakers, and the sound has a reasonable amount of bass and can fill a small room pretty well. It's nice enough if you're watching videos, for example. And the display is protected by Gorilla Glass 4 as well. Not that generally most of us really attack our displays, but just in case. So how about battery life? In a mixed case of business and productivity and a little bit of photo editing, that sort of thing, our usual test, 150 nits of brightness. So we're doing Word, we're doing Excel, we're doing a little social media kind of networking stuff. You get the idea, streaming a little bit of Netflix, editing some photos in Photoshop. With our 4K OLED display, which is the one that has the worst gas mileage, and we do have the 97 watt-hour battery, we average about 7.5 to 8 hours of battery life. For a laptop this powerful, that's actually pretty good. If you go with the full HD, you should be able to easily add 2 hours onto the battery life. And even the 4K IPS touchscreen option gets a little bit better battery life, so that could add about an hour on. Now, caveat with OLED displays, it's not about the burn-in. They're pretty good with display burn-in issues and all that sort of thing, but they don't use any power displaying black, which is why Dell ships this by default with a black theme. Stay with that black theme. It makes a difference. You'll get better battery life. Your battery life will also depend on what is on screen. If you're watching a movie, for example, there tend to be a good number of dark scenes, not bright white scenes. You're going to get better battery life. If you're staring at a white Word document or white Word pages all day, you will get shorter battery life by 1 to 2 hours. This comes with the usual 130-watt charger. It's a little barrel pin style connector charger. To get inside, you unscrew the visible Torx T5 screws around the edge, lift up the little XPS door where the service tag is located, and there are 2 long Phillips head screws here and over here. And when we flip it over, you can see we have some thermal tape, very sticky, very delicate stuff, so be careful. One for your SSD and the other one's over here for our PCH. So good stuff then. And inside, look at this, they have redesigned the thermal solution a bit. Different number of screws, so you can't retrofit this on an older XPS 15, by the way. But what they've done on the Core i9 is covered some of the VRMs, voltage regulator modules, which tend to be one of the things that get too hot on an XPS 15. Now, if you get the Core i7, you don't get as involved a heat sink when it comes to cooling the VRMs. Oh well, Dell says they feel like it's not necessary versus the Core i9. I know you and I might have a different opinion of that, but that is what it is. Here are our 2 fans, and that's about as much room really as they have for fans and something as compact as this. Our 2 RAM slots, awesome to have those. Our M.2 SSD slot. Here is our killer 1650 AX cards, Wi-Fi AX card right there, socketed as well. And this is the battery, which is the 97 watt-hour battery, so it takes up a good deal of the internal area, and we're happy to have that because it does mean pretty good battery life given the power of the machine. And our stereo speakers there fired down and towards the front edge at you, which is a good place for them to fire. So that's the Dell XPS 15 for 2019, model 7590. Same chassis, webcam up top. Now, yay that, Intel 9th Gen CPUs, you get the idea, and better graphics inside. And as a business laptop / pro apps laptop, it still absolutely rocks. It may not seem as amazingly crazy thin and light as it used to as the competition catches up with that, but it's still one of the better looking, classier looking machines. You know, it doesn't scream gamery or anything like that. And believe me, it's not a gaming laptop, even though you're going to be tempted, like I said. But for the rest, it's quite good. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos, and thumbs up if you like this vid.